Welcome everyone to this month's issue of Talk for EANT members. In October 2014 at the EANT conference, I had the pleasure of interviewing Renee Siegel, who is one of our certified teachers in the narrative tradition and also an expert on using the Enneagram with people who are in recovery and have addiction. So now I would like to introduce you to Renee. I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. Renee, I would like to just hear a little bit in general about how you got into this work and what makes you feel so passionate about it.
I've been working in the field of behavioral health for 35 years, and a little less than a decade ago I stumbled upon the Enneagram. And within the world of behavioral health, I've been working with marriage and family concerns particularly in the addictions community. And as an Enneagram 2, it was quite juicy to be introduced to this notion that there was this amazing tool that could heal relationships. And the most interesting relationship tidbit I learned was that I had to heal the relationship with myself first to be more effective in terms of working with others. So the tool of the Enneagram is just amazing because it has given me a path of and a map for self-awareness and self-growth. It's also given me a tool to use with clients, and it's also really compatible with the 12 steps of recovery in terms of particularly from the narrative tradition in the Enneagram, is that you get to tell your own story, and the story in that self-revelation is a path of looking at your patterns of thinking and of feeling and of behaving, and of looking what drives them and what's underneath them and healing them. And the 12 steps do exactly that too. So
I would imagine with the Enneagram having a model there where we're not just talking about addiction, but they see that there's something in common, that I'm similar to other people who don't have this addiction, that actually maybe creates a sense of safety and also encouragement. Like we all have these patterns.
yeah, I think you're right. I think that it takes it out of the format of just this heavy duty, this sense of looking at the addiction and it becoming such a laborious, difficult process, and then just looking at not only pattern behaviors or pattern thoughts and feelings, but that as they come to understand them in a bigger way, that those patterns are magnificent patterns too. There's a high side of those patterns, and that those same character aspects that contributed to the addiction can actually be accessed and owned and transformed into energy for recovery. And that's what's pretty amazing. So they can take a look at the patterns outside of the addictive cycle, and they can see them as both having a high and a low side as well. So I think it really is an amazing tool.
Do people who first come to this work find it difficult or more difficult to identify their type than people who've not had, serious addiction problems?
Another excellent question. People who have had addictive issues since their early adolescence and even earlier than that have a very hard time in general typing themselves. Their character structures are either not well formed or they don't have a lot of memory before that. And sometimes there's so many neural pathways that have been destroyed due to the addictions that until those are healed, and sometimes with some drugs or behavioral addictions it can take 4, 5, 6 years to repair those neural pathways. Sometimes they have a very difficult time identifying type. Most people who began using or developed an addiction in late adolescence and early adulthood don't seem to have nearly as difficult a time identifying type. And more importantly than identifying type or coming to a conclusion that I'm one type, we can certainly begin with things about the centers of knowing and the introduction that these are just patterns of behavior that people have and thoughts and feelings that people have used to thrive and strive in the world. It's about managing energy in general. It's about managing the human organism's desire to be alive versus just managing an addiction. So
thinking in terms of the three centers of the head and the heart and the body, what are some general things that you find in common in terms of addictions, with maybe the head type, starting with the head types first and then moving down to the other centers, in terms of commonality or things people might reach for, and what those motivations might be?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is of course a generalization, but our head types, many of them have addictions that are related to diminishing anxiety. So their substance abuse can be using benzodiazepines, other anti-anxiety medications to manage anxiety. They could be things that are developed as addictive kinds of tendencies around gambling because they're gathering knowledge and they can, let's say, predict what they believe the outcome of a horse race or sporting event. Other head issues, the head type tendencies for addictions might be, it depends on the phobic or counterphobic stance of the six. So you could see both an adrenaline seeking as well as an inhibitory seeking, either behavior or substance use. And I think that action seeking behaviors or looking for an adrenaline seeking high are using things like amphetamines or action sports gambling, playing craps, horse betting, and the escape-seeking behaviors or use of drugs or moving into the phobic stance might be marijuana to quiet down that brain that just can't stop, the use of sleep aids, not being able to sleep, slot machines in terms of gaming and things like that.
One more question while we're still with the head types. Is there a sense or a commonality around a feeling that I could stop, I can outsmart this, or kind of that kind of feeling?
Well, now you're talking about the defense mechanisms, and that's very interesting because I think when we look at the defense mechanisms of the 5s, 6s, and 7s, you're going to see that they're routed in, or kind of rooted in this sense of I can outsmart this. Absolutely. But by and large, you know, all types have variations of denial, whether it's projection or introspection or reaction formation or rationalizations or justifications or flat-out denial, minimizing, all of those kinds of things that will be used to support the addictive cycle, because the addictive cycle, or the relationship, whether it's a behavioral addiction, which is called a process addiction, or a substance addiction, which could be chemical dependency, all of them become the primary relationship one has with life. That is the mistress, or the, I guess that's a pretty sexist term, it could be the primary relationship that one covets at all costs. And the defense mechanism is what supports that in terms of survival energy, egoic energy, masked energy, something that's could be self-sabotaging. So.
Okay, moving into the heart center.
Heart centers, things to regulate moods. For our 4s, they might play with their moods. They might want, you know, a greater sense of drama in their life, and so they might use mood-altering substances to create that. 2s generally are taking all sorts of over-the-counter things to deal with physical maladies related to not taking really good care of themselves. 3s, we see workaholism We see alcoholism in all of the addictions because it is the only illusory drug. It is a central nervous system depressant. But by and large, when people are drinking, they think that it's not a central nervous system depressant. They think they're the life of the party and they're having a great time. So alcoholism goes throughout every one of the 9 types. It's an equal opportunity destroyer when it comes to the addictive cycle. And in our 3s, you might see a lot of sexual addictions, sexual acting out, high-risk sexual acting out. And then as we move into our belly centers, our 1s tend to do a lot of restrictive things around body image. You see a lot of eating disorders in 1s. And our 8s, there's a lust platform or a gusto platform with if 1 is good, 10 is better. So it could be anything. It could be compulsive overeating. It could be tobacco. It could be alcohol. It could be heroin. It could be cocaine. It could be anything. And our 9s will do anything to narcotize. So that could go from something as simple as watching too much TV and not getting enough exercise to marijuana to opiates to the numbing out.
Thank you. The relationship, whether it's an addictive behavior or where it's really running their lives versus just those who aren't addicts, a lot of things that you've described, the motivations are still there. It's just the degree to which someone is using something outside of themselves, and how destructive that becomes.
Right, how much it's taken over their lives. Yeah, it's always a mystery. We know more and more now about genetic predisposition and things like that, but it is still a mystery why 2 people, especially if you looked at 2 identical twins, why one would develop an addiction and another wouldn't. If it was just genetics or genetic predisposition, if you had 2 identical twins, if one was a heroin addict, the other one would be as well. And we know that that's not true.
So for this audience, this is a talk member benefit, so everyone who's watching through talk knows the Enneagram, and I would imagine that pretty much if you're listening to this, you know someone in your life who you're close to who is either an addict who is not in recovery or might be in recovery. What do you advise for those of us who have someone important in our lives as to how would we even encourage someone to start thinking about the Enneagram? Is there any role that we can play?
Sure. Well, there's a series of things. First of all, the fellowships of both the Anonymous programs and the Anon programs, the family aspects. So there's Al-Anon and then Alcoholics Anonymous, Gam-Anon and Gamblers Anonymous. Get involved, find a tribe, find a community that you can relate to. Don't keep it a secret. It's really, really important that other people know what's going on. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. Don't enable the behaviors in any way, and by being the best person that you can, you're actually raising the bottom or doing a mini intervention. And for those people who are therapists, I've just completed a product of all the interviews of all 9 types that are both gamblers and substance abusers, and some of them have sexual addictions or eating disorders as well. And that has 9 distinct interviews where you can actually take the links and forward them to your patients or the clients that you're working with, and they can actually see themselves and the character structure and do there's a lot of work that can be done with that as well. Just be the best version of yourself you can be through any of those vehicles, and quit taking care of or supporting the addictive cycle. The more you understand what each one of us does to enable that addictive cycle to go on, the more informed we are about what we're doing, the more we can stop doing that.
So in closing, just looking at, again, the Enneagram, the 12 steps, this integration that you brought into the world, how has that changed, particularly your work with the Enneagram, how has that changed your work in the world with your clients? Might be a different perspective.
Sure. I just finished my holistic healthcare practitioner certification, and one of the things that's been my hobby, my passion, has been wellness. Come from a very medically modeled family where everybody that I saw sitting at my dinner table was pretty unhealthy, even if they had the title doctor before their name. And so I always wanted to be a drugless practitioner of some sort, and I've studied nutrition and have a lot of certifications here or there, but I've really incorporated this whole notion of the centers of knowing, energy flowing freely through your body and not getting stuck anywhere as a way of avoiding disease, mental health diseases, behavioral health diseases, spiritual diseases, physical diseases, and really pulling all of that together. So my next big work is to take a look at health and wellness strategies related to type, where it's not a one-size-fits-all. And there's a place that compassion kind of grows from that. The same thing that is true of the self-help community. Non-judgment, compassion, the ability that one size doesn't fit all, people being not only given permission but encouraged to tell their own stories, meeting people where they're at. Those are all ways that we'll find that the integration continues to evolve, and there'll be another paradigm shift, I'm sure, as my life continues to unfold, where more and more and more is revealed about the unified field and how all of this is related.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing in the world. It's so inspiring, and I just find that you're being able to meet people where they are, and helping us to find all the compassion that we're learning through the Enneagram study, being able to bring that to places where we might most be triggered.
Right, right.
Can just be such a beautiful gift to the world. So thank you, Renee.
Thank you very much, Evangeline. I appreciate being on.